The couple had been celebrating their 18th wedding anniversary at a resort in Palawan when terrorists kidnapped them and more than a dozen others.
Right now, we're passing by the area of Basilan Island, where the Abu Sayyaf first brought Martin and Gracia Burnham when they were kidnapped back in 2001. They spent just over a year in these jungles, constantly on the run, never knowing where their next meal was coming from, and completely dependent upon God for their daily survival.
We asked God for everything we needed. If we needed a drink of water, I asked God for a drink of water. And if we came to a stream, I drank the water. It didn't matter that it was dirty. It was water, and God had provided it for us.
What do you remember most about that day?
I remember that we hadn't eaten we were going on our 10th day. I didn't know you could live for 10 days without food, but we had salt and we had water. We would eat little leaves from certain plants that we would pass by. So we were weak and exhausted. I told Martin, I don't know how much longer I can do this. I always said that to him. And he said, you know, Gracia, I think we're going to get out of here. I just don't know when.
About noon on June 7th, 2002, shots rang out as the Philippine military attempted to rescue Martin and Gracia from their year-long captivity.
I immediately was shot in the leg before we could even get to the ground, and I kind of slid down the hill and came to rest beside Martin, and he was bleeding from his chest. And they saw I was alive and came and started dragging me up the hill, and I looked back at Martin and he was white, and that's when I knew he was dead. And they kind of bandaged me up at the top of the hill and called a helicopter, and it came and lifted me right out of there. Yeah.
Before their year in captivity, Martin was a busy pilot for New Tribe's mission, while Gracia supported him and helped raise their 3 children in the Philippines.
The best pilot that I've ever seen.
Martin often flew Dr. Alan Melicor to remote villages.
To me, Martin and Gracia reflect the persona of Christ. And so when they were adopted, I said, Lord, why them? Why Martin and Gracia? And then say, oh, why not them? Because I think the people that adopted them had really seen what Christians ought to be.
Gracia, the Abu Sayyaf took so much from you, your husband, a year of your life. How do you find forgiveness?
I think God came and did something in my heart, and I asked him, would you build forgiveness in my life? Would you help me start to love these guys? And he did it.
Today, several Abu Sayyaf members have come to know the Lord because Gracia chose to forgive and began the Martin and Gracia Burnham Foundation to help reach Muslims in the Philippines.
Some of the very guys that held us hostage got a hold of some of those things we had printed, and it impacted their lives. And God somehow used it, and so far, four of them have come to know the Lord.
Gracia also wrote the New York Times bestseller, In the Presence of My Enemies, and a follow-up to Fly Again. She's also a much sought-after speaker whose story of God's grace under trial resonates with everyone.
And they just want to hug me and say, we prayed for you. And I never get tired of hearing that.
Today, Gracia's youngest son, Zach, studies music at Calvary Bible School in Kansas City, the same school where his parents met and married. Oldest son, Jeff, is a missionary pilot just like his dad, serving in Africa. And daughter, Mindy, married a New Tribes missionary just like Gracia.
I'm a grandma twice, yay. And the children are grown and they're fine and they love the Lord. So the rest of what happens to me is just icing on the cake.
Gracia says, just like the title of her second book, she is learning to fly again.
It would be awful if I had gone through this horrible thing and come out on the other end thinking I had anything to do with it. So if I'm flying today, it's because of God's goodness in my life.